For 15 years, I raised Jessica's children like they were my own while she lived her best life. But when I got cancer, she used it to fool thousands online and planned to throw me away like garbage. But this time, I wasn't going quietly. It started at an ordinary afternoon. I was at the old oak table, laptop open, squinting at Ava's online schoolwork while a pot of beef stew bubbled behind me. Smelled good, too. Real broth. Time for my little patch out back, not that powdered junk Jessica keeps in the pantry. The front door slammed. Jessica was home. I wiped my hands on my apron just as she breezed into the kitchen, all suntanned skin and shopping bags. Her nails were done fresh in a glossy coral. Her hair had that expensive, layered look that no salon under $200 can pull off. "Costa Rica's booked," she chirped, tossing her bag onto the counter like she was pitching a winning softball. 10 days. All inclusive. God, I need it after the stress around here. I just blinked at her. Stress? She hadn't lifted a finger since her last self-care retreat 2 months ago. Trying to keep my voice even, I said, "Jess, I've been feeling strange lately. Tired down to the bone. I think I should probably get checked out." She didn't even look up from her phone. Just sipped a green smoothie the color of swamp water and said, "You'll be fine, Mom. Just drink more water. Everybody's tired these days." My anger simmered. Right there, next to the stew pot. 15 years. 15 years I raised her kids while she climbed corporate ladders, chased boyfriends, and scheduled Botox appointments. Ava, sweet thing, was curled up on the couch nearby, earbuds in, oblivious to the brush off her Nana just got. I didn't push it. That's the thing about loving someone too much. You learn to swallow a lot more than you should. I turned back to the stove, stirred the stew, and listened to Jessica chattering about how she was finally going to get her mindset right, with daily beach yoga and a detox cleanse. I thought about the nights I sat up with Ava during her colicky phase, the mornings I sewed Mason's Halloween costumes by hand because Jessica had an early meeting, the birthdays I baked cupcakes for, the science fairs, the lost teeth tucked under pillows. I thought about every moment Jessica was too busy, and how I never was. And now? Now I was nothing more than a fixture, the live-in help, a piece of the furniture she could ignore until it needed dusting off. I pressed my hand to the counter to steady myself. The Formica was cool under my palm, but my blood was running hot. Funny how life circles back around. 1 minute you're holding their hand, teaching them to walk, and the next they're telling you to hydrate more when your body's falling apart. That night, I couldn't eat much of the stew. Even the smell of it turned my stomach. I sat by the little kitchen window, listening to the rain beat against the glass, wondering when exactly I became invisible. But deep inside, in that stubborn place no one could touch, not even Jessica, something shifted. A tiny crack, a hairline fracture. Something was coming. I didn't know it yet, not really, but something was about to break wide open. And this time, it wasn't going to be me. It started with a photo. One of Jessica's coworkers tagged her in it on Facebook. Jessica at a school fundraiser, holding up a check for the PTA with one arm, and Ava with the other. Perfect hair, perfect smile. Headline above it that read, "Single Mom Warrior, Jessica McAllister does it all." I sat in the living room, slippers half off, with a mug of peppermint tea going cold in my hand. Read it twice. Then a third time, just to be sure. Did it all? Did it all? I let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a cough. My lungs were still aching from the cold I caught last week picking up Mason from soccer in the rain, because Jessica had a networking mixer. Still, I clicked through the article. Raising 2 teens on her own, it said. Built her career without a safety net. Overcame hardship with grace. Jessica had even quoted herself. "I've never had help. It was just me and the kids. We got through it together." My hand tightened around the mug. My knuckles went white. No help? Was I the ghost of Christmas babysitting? I scrolled down. There was more. Some little anecdote about Ava's seizures when she was 3. Jessica claimed she stayed up for 7 straight nights, terrified and alone. I nearly dropped the mug. I was there. I held Ava in my arms. I took her to the ER. I slept in the hospital cot. Jessica had flown to Vegas that weekend for a conference. No mention of me. Not a line. Not a footnote. I shut the laptop, slow and careful, like it might explode. I don't know what stung more, the erasure or the ease with which she pulled it off. Jessica had rewritten the story, handed it out to the world like glossy brochures, and I was the blank space where truth used to live. Later that week, at the grocery store, I ran into an old neighbor, Edie from down the block. Sweet woman, always wearing earrings too big for her ears. She leaned over the cantaloupe bin and said, "Linda, you must be so proud. Jessica's interview was incredible. Raising 2 kids with no one to lean on. What a woman," I smiled. Tight. Then I changed the subject. Asked about Edie's cat. Pretended like I hadn't just swallowed broken glass. Because how do you say? Actually, I was there every damn day for 15 years while she ran around pretending to be the heroine. That night, I sat at the dining room table after everyone else had gone to bed. The old photo albums lay spread open. One had a syrup stain from when Mason knocked over his waffles in 2011. I flipped through pages. Ava covered in spaghetti at 1, Mason sleeping on my chest at 3, Jessica nowhere to be found in half of them, and in every single one, there I was, smiling, present. But apparently, history only remembers who tells it loudest. The next morning I tried to talk to her. Jessica was rushing out the door in gym leggings and sunglasses the size of saucers. "Jess," I said gently, "I saw the article. You know I've always been proud of you, but—" She cut me off, already halfway to her car. "Oh God, don't make a big deal. They needed a narrative. People don't click on boring." I stared at her. Boring. So the truth is boring now? Jessica rolled her eyes like I was asking for her kidney. "Mom, stop being so sensitive. It's just PR. Besides, nobody wants to read about Grandma doing flashcards. It doesn't sell." She slid into the driver's seat of her Lexus and peeled out before I could say another word. I stood in the driveway, apron still tied at my waist, fingers curling into fists I didn't know I still had in me. Flashcards, huh? I came back inside and sat on the edge of my bed, knees stiff, heart buzzing. There was a time I believed love was quiet service, that the best mothers and grandmothers were the ones who worked behind the curtain, making life easier, never asking for applause. But now, I wasn't so sure. Because sometimes when you're quiet too long, people mistake it for absence. And sometimes when you give everything, the world decides you had nothing to do with the outcome. Well, maybe it was time they remembered who had really been there. Not for the credit, not for the camera, just 'cause I loved them. I didn't say anything that day. But I went and got my old scrapbooks from the attic, wiped the dust off the boxes labeled Ava's first grade, Nana's notes, charged up the camcorder I hadn't touched in a decade. I didn't know it then, but soon enough, those memories, my memories, would be the match that lit the whole thing on fire. 2 weeks later, I got the call. I was sitting in the den, knees wrapped in a quilt, flipping through an old gardening catalog I couldn't afford to order from anymore. The doctor's office number blinked on my cell phone screen. "Mrs. McAllister," Dr. Patel said gently, "the biopsy came back. It's positive. Cancer." 3 syllables that took the air right out of the room. I pressed the quilt tighter against my chest. Listened to Dr. Patel's voice move through the next steps. Blood work, scans, treatment options. He kept using words like manageable, optimistic, care plan. But they all blurred into one throbbing roar in my head. "You're sick, Linda. You're really sick." When I finally hung up, the house was so quiet, I could hear the clock ticking. Tick, tick, tick. It took me a full hour before I worked up the courage to tell Jessica. She was in the kitchen, rummaging through the pantry for her keto snacks, muttering about how bloated she felt from bad energy. Mason was upstairs gaming, Ava at her friend's house. "Jess," I said, voice low, "can we sit down? I have some news." She sighed, dramatic, like I was already wasting her time. We sat across from each other at the table. I folded my hands. They wouldn't stop shaking, so I gripped them tighter. "I'm sick," I said finally. "It's cancer." I saw it, plain as day, the flicker across her face. Not fear, not sadness, annoyance. She tapped her nails on the tabletop, rapid, irritated. "Oh, Mom," she said, drawing out the words like chewing gum. "I'm so sorry you're going through that." But her eyes were already darting to her phone. "I'll help find you a nurse," she added quickly. "Maybe even a good assisted living place? Honestly, it's probably for the best. I mean, with your health and everything." "Assisted living?" I stared at her. I must have heard wrong. "I live here, Jessica. With you. With Ava and Mason." She waved her hand, brushing the thought away like it was smoke. "I just don't have the bandwidth right now. Work is insane. The kids are teenagers. I can't be a full-time caregiver too. Bandwidth. Not heart. Not love. Bandwidth." My throat closed up. I had to take a sip of water just to swallow the bile rising. "You've been my help for so long," she said lightly, tapping her phone, probably searching for nursing agencies. "Maybe it's time you have professional care. You deserve it, Mom." Professional care. Like I was a leaky faucet or a cracked driveway. I should have screamed, thrown the water glass, demanded to know how she could turn me into a burden in the blink of an eye. But I didn't, because a lifetime of loving her had trained me to shrink instead of shout. I just nodded slowly, felt something inside me cave in a little more. Jessica stood, stretched like a cat, already moving on, already planning her next Instagram post about navigating the emotional toll of caregiving for sympathy clicks. By the next morning, Jessica had a plan. It wasn't a plan for my comfort or healing. It was a business plan. I overheard her on the phone in her bedroom, voice low and urgent. "Yeah, I'm thinking we launch the GoFundMe this weekend. Help a single mom support her cancer-stricken mother. Play the sympathy angle hard. Use photos from before the diagnosis. You know, smiling and active. Tug the heartstrings." I leaned against the hallway wall, dizzy. She was going to monetize my illness, turn my real, raw fear into PayPal donations, turn my fight into clickbait. The next day, she cornered me at the kitchen counter, with her manicured hands fluttering like a politician's. "Mom, we're going to start a fundraiser for you. It'll be great. People will rally around you. Us. The community loves a good cause." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I said nothing at all. Just watched her scroll through Canva templates for the fundraiser page, like she was picking a theme for a baby shower. Within 3 days, the page was live. Photos of me at Ava's school concerts. Me smiling under the garden arbor. Me unaware that these little moments would be weaponized to fill Jessica's pockets. The donations poured in. 500, 2,000, 5,000. Strangers from town, old co-workers, even people Jessica barely knew shared the link. By the end of the first week, the number on the screen read $18,237. And where did the money go? Not to my chemo, not to a nurse, not to me at all. Jessica put a down payment on a kitchen remodel, white quartz counters, new pendant lights, the whole magazine spread look she'd always wanted. "This way, when you're in treatment, Mom," she said brightly, "you'll have a beautiful space to come home to." She grinned and kissed the air near my cheek like it made her a good daughter. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling fan spinning above me. The soft whir was hypnotic, almost comforting, but the thoughts spinning in my mind were sharper. Jessica had made a decision. She didn't see me as her mother anymore. I was a resource, an inconvenience, a sympathy generator, but what she didn't know, what she would never see coming, was that I wasn't as helpless as she thought. I had been invisible for years. I knew how to move quietly. And the day was coming when Jessica McAllister would wish she had never, ever underestimated the woman who raised her. The hammer started at 8 o'clock sharp the next morning. I sat in my rocking chair, wrapped in an old quilt, watching two men in muddy boots lug slabs of quartz across my front yard. The sound of drills and shouting workmen filled the air, bouncing off the garden walls I had tended for 20 years. Jessica stood on the porch with her phone out, documenting the whole thing for Instagram. #blessed, she chirped, angling her selfie just right to catch the gleam of the new counters behind her. I shifted in my chair, feeling the ache deep in my bones. The doctor said the chemo would do that, said I'd feel like my body wasn't mine anymore. He didn't mention how much worse it would feel to watch my daughter redecorate with money people thought was meant to save me. Jessica's friend stopped by too, wearing Lululemon leggings and fake concern. "Oh, Jess, this is stunning," they gushed, running their manicured hands along the marble backsplash. "And how's your poor mom doing?" one added, her voice pitched high like she was talking about a sick dog. Jessica waved vaguely toward the den where I sat. "She's hanging in there," she said with a sad little smile. "We're just doing the best we can." They clucked their tongues and handed her more gifts. Candles, bath salts, a basket labeled "Self-Care for Caregivers." Not a single soul crossed the threshold to see me. Not one. I stared down at my hands folded neatly in my lap, my wedding band, now loose on my thinning fingers, caught the morning light. And in that moment I realized something. They didn't see me as a person anymore. I was a character in Jessica's sob story, a prop for her pity parade. Ava and Mason noticed though. Kids always see more than you think. One night, after the workers finally packed up, and Jessica was off on another mental health dinner with her friends, Ava wandered into the den, clutching a bowl of popcorn. "Want to watch something, Nana?" she asked, plopping down beside me. I smiled, too tired to lift my hand, but grateful. Grateful for any crack in the walls Jessica had built between me and my grandbabies. We ended up flipping through old home videos, tapes so dusty I had to blow the tops clean. And what we found? Well, it changed everything. The first video was of Ava's 3rd birthday. The cake was lopsided, homemade, and covered in pink sprinkles. Jessica wasn't there, hadn't even RSVP'd. I was the one helping little Ava blow out the candles, her tiny hand gripping mine tight. "That was you," Ava whispered, frowning. "Not Mom," I shrugged, swallowing the ache in my throat. "She was busy back then," I said softly. But Ava didn't look convinced. The next tape was Mason's kindergarten graduation. I was the one holding the camera, cheering too loudly, zooming in on Mason's gap-toothed grin, while Jessica's chair sat empty in the background. Then came school plays, soccer matches, Christmas mornings. Always the same pattern, me in the front row. Jessica, nowhere to be seen. Ava turned to me, her face pale under the soft glow of the TV screen. "Nana, why didn't you ever tell us?" I gave her a tired smile. "Because it didn't matter. I loved you enough for both of us." But in Ava's eyes, I saw something shift. Not pity, not sadness. Rage. Real, hot teenage rage. The kind that didn't forgive easily. The kind that remembered. 2 days later, Mason stumbled onto the real bombshell. I was curled up in the den again when he came skidding into the room, his face white as a sheet. "Nana," he whispered, voice trembling, "you gotta hear this." He pulled out his phone and pressed play. It was a recording. Jessica's voice, loud and giddy on a phone call. "I mean, it was genius," she said, laughing. "Who's gonna question the poor cancer-stricken mom? We milked that fundraiser perfectly. Kitchen remodel in Bali next spring, baby." Another voice laughed with her. "A friend, maybe." I didn't recognize it, but Jessica's voice was unmistakable. Clear, cold, proud. Mason watched me, waiting for me to blow up, to scream, to throw something. I didn't. I just closed my eyes, let the truth settle like heavy stones in my chest. 15 years of daycare pickups, spelling bees, and chicken soup. And now I was just a convenient lie, a fundraising mascot, an inconvenience to be shuttled off to assisted living once my usefulness dried up. But they had underestimated me. Oh, how they had underestimated me. I opened my eyes, met Mason's scared gaze, and gave him a small, steady nod. "Save that recording, baby," I said. "And tell your sister to do the same." Because the battle Jessica started wasn't going to end the way she thought. Not this time. Not with me curled up like a kicked dog. After that night, everything in the house felt different. Jessica was still her usual self, strutting around with her AirPods in, barking into her phone about branding opportunities and influencer partnerships. But Ava and Mason, they looked at me differently, like maybe they were seeing me, really seeing me for the first time. Ava started spending more time at home after school, not holed up in her room either. She'd plop herself down next to me in the den with a bag of chips and say, "Want help sorting your scrapbooks, Nana?" I nodded, pretending my throat wasn't too tight to answer. Together, we cracked open those old binders, thick leather albums with cracked spines and pages yellowed at the edges. Every page told a story Jessica had tried to erase. There was Ava's preschool Mother's Day card, not to Jessica, but to me. Crayon-scrawled letters. "I love Nana the mostest in the world." There was Mason's 4th grade science fair photo, me standing behind him proudly, while he grinned next to a lopsided volcano project. Jessica's name wasn't even listed on the participation form. Tucked into the back of one album, we found an old newspaper clipping from the local paper, a tiny article about a charity bake sale I had organized when Mason was hospitalized with pneumonia. The caption read, "Local grandma rallies community for sick grandson." Not Jessica. Me. Ava ran her fingers over the newsprint like it was some kind of sacred relic. "Why didn't Mom ever tell us?" she whispered. I set down my teacup, watching the ripples spread through the lukewarm liquid. "Because it didn't fit the story she wanted to tell," I said softly. "And it's easier to rewrite history when nobody fights you on it." My voice cracked a little on that last part. Because I hadn't fought her. I'd let her paper over my life like old wallpaper, layer after layer, until even I could barely see the truth anymore. Ava closed the scrapbook gently and turned to me. "We're not letting her get away with it." I didn't know exactly what she meant. Not yet, but something fierce flickered behind her eyes. A wildfire starting small but sure. Meanwhile, Jessica kept spiraling higher. The kitchen renovation finished. Jessica posted 20 Instagram stories showing off the healing space she created, complete with a brand new espresso bar and imported tile backsplash. The fundraiser page stayed up for weeks, still raking in pity donations from well-meaning strangers. She even launched a second GoFundMe, ongoing care costs for our warrior mom. By then, the total had climbed over $22,000. All while I sat in the den, sipping broth through cracked lips, trying to keep weight on my shrinking frame. One morning I heard her on the phone, bragging about it to a friend. "Honestly, it's been a blessing in disguise," she said, laughing. "We're finally getting ahead financially. And Mom's too out of it to care. It's a win-win." I gripped the arms of my chair so hard my knuckles turned white. She thought I was out of it. She thought I was weak. But what Jessica didn't know was that the kids were already laying the groundwork for her fall. Ava was the one who reached out first. She emailed the fundraiser platform directly, attaching copies of the scrapbook pages, the old newspaper article, and, most importantly, Mason's recording of Jessica admitting she faked part of the story for donations. Her email was short but powerful. "My name is Ava McAllister. I'm the granddaughter of the woman this fundraiser claims to support. I have evidence that my mother, Jessica McAllister, is using these funds for personal luxury expenses, not medical care. Attached is proof. Please investigate." God, I was proud of her. That night, sitting together on the couch, I watched her hit send with a hand that didn't even tremble. Mason leaned his head against my shoulder, silent but solid. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something bloom in my chest. Not just hope, not just pride. Power. The kind of power that comes from telling the truth, no matter how messy or painful it is. Jessica might have built her life on pretty lies. But me, Ava, and Mason, we had something she couldn't fake. History. Memory. Love. Real love. The kind that doesn't need a hashtag to prove it exists. The next days were a blur. Emails back and forth with the fundraiser company. A request for more evidence. Phone calls Ava handled with a calm that would have impressed any lawyer. Jessica stayed oblivious. Too busy planning her healing retreat to Bali with the stolen donation money. Too busy taking selfies in her new marble-tiled kitchen. Too sure that nobody would ever dare to call her out. But the thing about building your castle on sand? All it takes is one good wave. And sweetheart, that wave was already on the horizon. It was Mason who delivered the final blow. My sweet, shy Mason, the boy who once needed me to chase away monsters from under his bed, now stood taller than me, phone in hand, heart hammering like a drum. He didn't want to show me at first. Kept fiddling with his sleeves, cheeks red. But after a long, heavy silence, he finally said, "You need to see this, Nana." I nodded, steeling myself. God knew what new wound he was about to uncover. He played the recording he'd captured just 2 nights ago, when Jessica thought he was upstairs gaming, lost in his headphones. Her voice, crystal clear, cutting through the static like a knife. "Doesn't matter if the fundraiser gets shut down," Jessica said, laughing. "I already moved the money. It's in my name now, mixed in with personal funds. Good luck proving a thing." A male voice chuckled. I didn't recognize it. Maybe one of her work friends. Then Jessica kept going, more bitter now. "Besides, the old woman's practically dead weight. Once she's in a home, I'll sell the house. Cash out. She won't even know it happened." Mason watched my face, waiting for the explosion. For tears, for anger. But all I felt was cold. Cold and clear. Like winter sunlight slicing through dirty windows. Jessica wasn't just planning to abandon me. She was planning to steal everything. The house. The garden I planted with my own hands. The kitchen table with every scratch from every school project. Gone. Sold off for pocket money. Just like she had already sold my dignity to fund a new backsplash and a Bali trip. I exhaled slowly, feeling something inside me shift. Not crack this time. Click. Like a safety finally being turned off. I placed my hand over Mason's, his knuckles still white from gripping the phone. "You did good, baby," I whispered. "Real good." We didn't wait long. The very next afternoon, Ava got the email. Fundraiser platform. Urgent response needed. The words flashed across her screen as we huddled in the den together, the rain drumming steady against the windows. Ava opened it with trembling fingers. "Dear Ms. McAllister, thank you for providing evidence regarding your concerns. After thorough review, we have suspended the active fundraiser pending a full investigation. Funds not yet withdrawn have been frozen. Legal action may be pursued against the organizer based on our findings. Please respond to confirm whether local authorities have been contacted." Ava looked up at me, wide-eyed. Mason whooped, punching the air. I just closed my eyes and whispered a prayer. Not for Jessica's sake, for ours. Because once Jessica realized her cash cow was drying up, she'd come at us like a cornered animal. And sure enough, it didn't take long. That night, the house felt thick with tension. Jessica slammed through the front door at nearly 9 o'clock, her face tight and stormy. She didn't even bother with her usual fake sweetness. "You," she snapped, pointing a manicured finger right at Ava. "What the hell did you do?" Ava stood her ground, shoulders squared, eyes clear. "I told the truth," she said simply. Jessica's face twisted into something ugly, something I barely recognized. "You little traitor," she hissed. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've ruined everything." Mason stepped up beside his sister, his small hands balling into fists. "You ruined it, Mom," he said, voice low but steady. "You did this. Not us." Jessica turned to me then, eyes burning, voice shaking with fury. "And you," she spat. "You let them. After everything I've done for you." I smiled, slow, sad, wiser than she could ever understand. "Everything you did, Jessica. I said quietly, was for yourself. And now, the bill was coming due. By the next morning, Jessica's bank accounts had been flagged. The fundraiser platform filed an official complaint with the local authorities. Fraud, elder abuse, misappropriation of charitable funds. The words sounded heavy and final when the officer explained them over the phone. Jessica screamed when they served her notice, cried big crocodile tears when the court froze her accounts, begged, threatened, promised to change. None of it worked. I didn't have to lift a finger. The truth, once it's finally let loose, doesn't need pushing. It rolls downhill all on its own, faster and faster, smashing everything fake in its path. Jessica's boss caught wind of the investigation. By Friday afternoon, she was fired. Ethics violations cited right there in black and white. By Saturday, the landlord of her fancy new kitchen filed eviction papers for missed rent payments. She tried to bluff, to stall, to lie her way out like she always had. But this time, nobody was buying what she was selling, especially not her own children, especially not me. We weren't done yet, sugar. Not by a long shot, because justice was coming. And this time, it was wearing a quiet woman's smile and carrying 15 years' worth of receipts. The day I filed the lawsuit, the air smelled like rain and resolve. I wore my best slacks, the navy ones I kept tucked away for important occasions that never seemed to come. Pulled my hair back into a simple bun, slipped on a little lipstick, not because I needed it, but because it made me feel like myself, a woman who mattered. Mason stood to my left, holding the big manila folder we'd stuffed with evidence. Ava stood to my right, clutching the flash drive with all the recordings and fundraiser screenshots. My heart squeezed seeing them there. Not as kids, as soldiers. The clerk at the courthouse barely blinked when I slid the documents across the counter. She just stamped them with a loud, satisfying thunk. Elder abuse and fraud. Linda McAllister versus Jessica McAllister. It was official. No more hiding. No more hoping Jessica would change. We were going to drag the truth out into the light, kicking and screaming if we had to. Jessica wasn't served until the following Monday. I half expected another storm, screaming, cursing, maybe even tears. But no. She came slinking into the house with her sunglasses pulled down low, her voice honey-slick and fake. "Mom," she said sweetly, "you can't really want to go through with this, right? Court's messy. Expensive. It'll just make things harder on everyone." I set down my teacup carefully. "Not on me," I said. Jessica blinked, thrown off. "It's not personal," she whined. "I just needed the money. You know how expensive life is with teenagers. You're not even dying. You're exaggerating everything." Ava stepped forward then, voice clear and slicing. "You lied about Nana for likes, Mom. You stole from her." Jessica whirled to face her daughter, her face crumbling into something desperate and ugly. "You're just a kid. You don't understand adult problems." Mason crossed his arms, chin lifting stubbornly. "We understand right and wrong," he said. "Maybe better than you do." Jessica's mask slipped right there. Gone was the influencer, the smiling single mom. What was left was something hollow and furious. She stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. But it didn't matter. The train had already left the station. The day of the first court appearance, the rain held off just long enough for us to get inside without getting soaked. I sat with my court-appointed advocate, sweet woman named Mrs. Rayburn, all tight curls and sharper instincts. Ava and Mason sat behind me, their presence like armor I could feel against my back. Jessica swept in late, hair wild, eyeliner smudged. She didn't look polished anymore. She looked panicked. Her lawyer, a nervous young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, shuffled beside her, clutching a too-thin stack of papers. When the judge called the case, Jessica tried to speak first, tried to spin her usual sob story. "I was just trying to help my mother," she sniffed, dabbing dramatically at dry eyes. "I didn't know the rules about fundraising. It was all a misunderstanding." The judge, An older woman with silver hair and reading glasses perched low on her nose held up a hand. "Ms. McAllister, sit down," she said sharply. "You'll have your turn." Jessica deflated, sliding into her chair like a balloon losing air. Mrs. Rayburn rose, steady and unbothered. "Your Honor, we have extensive documentation," she said, voice calm. "Screenshots, audio recordings, financial records showing personal purchases made with crowdfunded money, the defendant's own admission that funds were diverted." The judge nodded. "Very well. Let's proceed with discovery." Jessica's lawyer mumbled something about needing more time. The judge's eyebrow ticked up. "You'll have 30 days, no more." Jessica gaped like a fish, but no words came out. Outside in the hallway afterward, she tried to corner me, tried to plead. "Mom," she hissed, voice raw, "don't do this. Think about my career. Think about Ava and Mason. You're tearing this family apart." I looked her dead in the eye. "You did that all by yourself." And then I turned my back on her, maybe for the first time in my life, and walked away. That night, back at home, Mason made popcorn and Ava found an old DVD of The Wizard of Oz. We curled up on the couch like we used to when they were little, letting Judy Garland's voice fill the room. "There's no place like home," she sang. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. Because home isn't where you hang your coat. It's where you're loved, even when you're broken, even when you're sick, even when you're tired. And sitting there, wrapped up in my grandbabies and the smell of buttered popcorn, I realized something simple and shattering. Jessica might have torn herself out of our story, but she couldn't erase the love that was still left behind. Love written in old scrapbooks, in birthday cakes baked by hand, in late-night fevers soothed by cool cloths. Love Jessica had never understood because she never stayed long enough to see it grow. And I would not let her steal that from me too. The body has a funny way of telling the truth when the heart won't. About 2 weeks after that first court date, I was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to stomach a bowl of oatmeal, when the room started spinning. Not gently either. It tilted hard, like the floor dropped out from under me. The next thing I knew, the oatmeal bowl crashed to the floor. Porcelain shards skittered across the tile. I must have blacked out for a minute, because when I opened my eyes, the world was sideways, and the kitchen clock was ticking louder than a drumbeat in my ears. I reached for the chair, tried to steady myself, but the strength just wasn't there. My heart thudded against my ribs, wild and wrong. Somewhere, deep inside, I knew this wasn't something I could brush off. This was serious. So I did what I'd been conditioned to do my whole life. I called for help. "Jessica," I croaked out, voice ragged. No answer. I tried again, louder. Still nothing. By the third time, panic set in. I dragged myself across the floor toward the den, gasping. Jessica wasn't here. Her car was in the driveway, but she wasn't inside. My hands fumbled for my cell phone on the counter. No service. Dead battery. Of course it was. Ava and Mason were at school. No neighbors close enough to hear me yell. And Jessica? Jessica had gone for a spa day. I found out later, after the hospital, after everything, that she'd booked a full package. Deep tissue massage, mud detox wrap, 90-minute facial champagne lunch by the pool, while I was lying on the kitchen floor unable to move. She didn't even leave a note. Didn't think to check on me before she left. Didn't once look back. When she finally stumbled through the front door 4 hours later, her skin was glowing and her hair smelled like lavender oils. She dropped her tote bag with a thud, kicking off her sandals. "Mom?" she called lazily, the way you might call for a cat. Then she saw me, still on the floor, still gasping. Eyes wide, she froze for a half-beat. "Oh my God, you're still down there," she said. "Why didn't you call?" I stared up at her, disbelief battling fury. "You weren't here," I rasped. She huffed as if I had ruined her day. All right, she muttered, grabbing her phone. "I'll call an Uber to the hospital." An Uber. Not an ambulance. An Uber. Because, ambulances are expensive, and Jessica had to save her pennies for Bali or Botox or whatever brand new healing experience she had lined up next. By the time we got to the ER, my skin was clammy and my heartbeat was skittering all over the place. They rushed me back without even asking for insurance cards. That's how bad I looked. Hooked me up to monitors, poked and prodded, ran tests. Meanwhile, Jessica sat in the waiting room, posting selfies of her long, emotional day on Instagram with captions like, "Sometimes you have to find strength even when you're falling apart." Mason and Ava came racing in not long after, red-faced and frantic. Bless them, they didn't even pause to scold Jessica. They just zeroed in on me, held my hand, braided themselves around me like a shield. The hospital social worker came by the next morning, a brisk woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense voice. "We need to talk about your home environment, Mrs. McAllister," she said. I knew what she was asking, and for the first time in my life, I didn't cover for Jessica. I told the truth. About the fundraiser, about the missed doctor's appointments, about the Uber to the ER. The social worker's jaw tightened. "That's elder neglect," she said flatly. "And it's mandatory for me to report it." Jessica threw a fit when she found out. "I'm your daughter," she shrieked in the hospital hallway, causing heads to turn. "You're really gonna sick the government on me? Over what? One mistake?" I just stared at her, feeling so tired. "You made a lot more than one mistake," I said. And this time, there was no apology big enough to cover it. No fundraiser flashy enough to wash it clean. Jessica stormed out, muttering curses under her breath, leaving me in that sterile hospital room with nothing but the faint beeping of machines and the steady warmth of my grandchildren's hands wrapped around mine. The next day, the hospital moved fast, filed an emergency petition. A temporary advocate, a court-appointed caregiver, was assigned to oversee my care until the civil suit wrapped up. Jessica? She was barred from making any decisions about my health, my living situation, or, God help her, my money. The locks at home were changed by sundown, and for the first time in 15 years, the house felt light. Empty, yes, but safe. I came home from the hospital 2 days later to a different house. The door opened to clean air. No more Jessica's coconut-scented candles trying to mask the rot underneath. The furniture stood exactly where it belonged, sunlight cutting clean stripes across the floor. The garden out back was wild, but breathing, green vines creeping up the trellis like they were grateful for the second chance. Ava and Mason had been busy. They'd scrubbed the kitchen, folded the laundry, tucked fresh flowers from the backyard into a chipped blue vase on the table. And there, right there in the middle of the living room, sat a new addition, a sleek, humming oxygen machine. Ava smoothed the tubing around it, pride flickering in her tired smile. "Dr. Patel said you might need this sometimes," she said, shy. "We wanted it ready before you came home." I brushed her hair back from her forehead. "My smart girl," I whispered. Mason popped up beside her, practically vibrating. "We made a schedule, Nana. Me and Ava are taking shifts so you're never alone." My throat tightened until it hurt. Because there it was, the real love Jessica had spent years chasing in Instagram likes, trying to buy with designer kitchens and fake fundraisers. Here it was, humble and bright, in the hands of 2 kids she hadn't even really raised. And somehow, through all the noise and betrayal, they still knew how to show up. Jessica tried calling that night, 14 times. When that didn't work, she tried the old tricks, texts dripping with guilt. "You're ruining this family." I was only trying to make things better. "I'm your daughter. Doesn't that count for something?" Each time my phone lit up, Mason or Ava reached over and silenced it without a word. Until finally, I turned the phone off completely. It was strange, the silence afterward. Not painful, not scary, freeing. No more bargaining, no more swallowing humiliation like pills, just to keep the peace. No more walking on eggshells in a house I paid for, among people I raised. I didn't owe Jessica another ounce of my peace. Not anymore. The civil case moved faster than anyone expected. Jessica, cornered and desperate, tried every trick in the book to delay things. She filed motions. She begged for extensions. She cried in front of the judge. But you can't outrun the truth once it's got your scent. And thanks to Ava's meticulous timeline, Mason's recordings, and the trail of bank records Jessica had been too sloppy to cover up, the whole ugly picture came into focus real fast. Fraud, neglect, financial exploitation. It wasn't just a lawsuit anymore. It was a warning to anyone who thought love could be weaponized without consequences. The day Jessica finally had to stand before the judge and hear the charges read out loud, she crumbled. Not with real remorse. No, it was a tantrum. She wailed about how unfair it was, how she was being, quote, punished for trying to be a good daughter, how the system was rigged against young, struggling single moms. The judge, bless her sharp-eyed soul, cut through the noise like a knife. "Ms. McAllister," she said, voice crisp as first frost, "this court does not find you a victim. We find you responsible. And actions have consequences." Jessica's face collapsed inward, all puffed up bravado leaking out. The judge ordered restitution for the stolen fundraiser money, every cent. And more than that, Jessica was barred from any contact with me unless I personally requested it, which I had no intention of doing. Not now. Not ever. We celebrated quietly that night. No cake. No streamers. Just me, Ava, Mason, and a candle flickering on the kitchen table. We ate simple bowls of soup, laughed at old memories, and let the weight of the past start to slip from our shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, I slept through the night. No fear gnawing at my ribs, no shame curdling in my gut, just peace, soft and steady. The kind you almost forget exists after years of surviving on crumbs. Jessica? Last I heard, she tried to start another fundraiser, this time for her wrongful persecution. It flopped within days. The community had seen enough. People she thought would always back her up turned away. The sympathy well had run dry. And Jessica, for once, had to sit in the silence she created. You know, people say blood is thicker than water. But I've learned something else along the way. Loyalty is thicker than both. And sometimes, the family you thought would carry you ends up being the dead weight that tries to drown you. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, the family you fought for will fight back for you when you need it most, even if you never asked them to. Even if all you ever did was love them the best way you knew how. You would have thought Jessica might lay low after the court ruling. Maybe find some humility, some dignity. You would have thought wrong. Not a week later, Ava showed me the latest. Jessica had plastered her sob story all over social media. Grainy black and white photos, fake tearful captions, fighting false accusations from my own family. Betrayed. Heartbroken. Still standing. Still standing? Maybe. But not for long. Because the world had already moved on without her. First, the job she tried to salvage? Gone. Blacklisted. Word gets around quick when ethics violations and elder abuse hang like a millstone around your neck. She tried freelancing, consulting, selling off-brand skincare on Instagram. Nothing stuck. People weren't buying what she was selling anymore. And believe me, Jessica always thought she was the best saleswoman in the room. Her landlord gave her 30 days to vacate once he caught wind of her court history. Not that she could pay rent anyway. The kitchen renovation, the one she flaunted like a badge of honor, repossessed. Turns out you can't finance marble countertops on lies. Piece by piece, her shiny, curated life crumbled down to the rotted studs. And the so-called friends who once toasted her single mom hustle? Gone too. People can smell desperation, sweetheart. And Jessica reeked of it. Meanwhile, our life blossomed like a hard-won garden finally getting rain. After the settlement, the community fundraiser, a real one this time, raised enough money to cover my medical bills. And then some. Neighbors I hadn't seen in years dropped off casseroles. Old friends sent cards. Even the nurses at the hospital pitched in a few dollars here and there. Not because I asked, not because I curated a narrative, because people knew the truth now. Knew who had shown up, quietly and consistently, for all those years. Ava and Mason helped me set up a little in-home care team. Nurses who actually cared, who listened when I said I needed an extra blanket or a softer chair. I started treatments again, properly this time, with real rest between each brutal session. I got a real will drawn up too, this time, with no loopholes, no vague promises, crystal clear. Everything went to Ava and Mason, not a penny to Jessica. Jessica tried to appeal the ruling, of course, filed some rambling paperwork about, quote, being misrepresented, and, quote, family betrayal. The judge dismissed it in less than 5 minutes. No new trial, no second chance, just a final nail in the coffin she built with her own 2 greedy hands. I didn't even show up to hear the decision. Didn't have to. Some battles, sweetheart, you fight with everything you have. Others, you win by simply outlasting the enemy. Jessica sent one more letter after that. A cheap little note scribbled on torn notebook paper, no envelope. Ava found it wedged in the doorframe and brought it to me, frowning. I opened it with hands steady as stone. I hope you're happy. You ruined my life. I was your daughter. No signature, no apology, no ownership. Just blame, as bitter and hollow as a cracked bell. I folded it neatly, placed it in the trash without ceremony. Because it didn't deserve any more of my energy. Jessica had already taken enough. That night, sitting under the old maple tree in the backyard, Ava and Mason beside me, I realized something. Jessica never ruined my life. She tried. God knows she tried, but she failed. Because my life was never built on her approval. It was built on the quiet things. On Ava's tiny hand clutching mine in a hospital waiting room. On Mason's proud grin when he showed me his first finished model airplane. On the late-night bowls of popcorn, the garden dirt under my nails, the scratched-up kitchen table holding a lifetime of dinners and stories. Jessica thought she was the center of my world. But she wasn't. She was just a storm I weathered. The real heart of my life, the real home, had been standing beside me all along. The stars came out slowly that night, shy at first, then bolder. I leaned my head back against the old tree trunk, breathing in the cool, damp air. You did good, Nana, Ava whispered. Mason nodded solemnly, like a boy who understood battles in a way no boy should have to. I had good teachers, I whispered back, squeezing their hands. We sat there for a long time in the soft dark. No drama, no pretending, no lies, just a woman, her grandchildren, and a life finally free. Chemo is a strange thing. It's not like the movies, where you throw up once and bounce back with a brave little smile. It's slower, meaner, a war inside your bones. Some days I felt like I was dragging a sack of cement just to get across the living room. Some days I could hardly lift a spoon without feeling like I'd run a marathon. But every morning, without fail, Ava was there, quietly boiling water for my tea, fluffing the pillows, reading her homework aloud to keep me company. And every evening Mason would sit beside me, feet tapping nervously under the couch, pretending to do his homework while sneaking glances at me every few minutes. Like, if he looked away too long, I might disappear. God love those kids. They were my medicine in ways no doctor could measure. The new in-home care team helped too. Nurse Sandy was my favorite. Soft-spoken, tough as boot leather when she needed to be. She didn't baby me, didn't talk to me like I was a fragile old woman made of glass. She respected me, treated me like a whole person, not just a diagnosis. You're tougher than most 20-year-olds I know, she said once, tightening the blood pressure cuff with a wry smile. I just laughed. A real laugh, rusty but genuine. Toughness is what you get, I told her, when you don't have any other damn choice. A few weeks after the court case ended, something remarkable happened. Ava came into the den one afternoon, holding an envelope. "Nana," she said shyly, "some people at school did a project on caregiving heroes. I nominated you." She handed me the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from the school principal, thanking me for my unseen sacrifices and unwavering love. There was even a little certificate, stamped with a gold star, naming me an honorary Community Caregiver of the Year. I held it in my hands for a long moment, blinking hard. Nobody ever handed out awards for packing lunches, sewing Halloween costumes, sitting up through fevers. Nobody ever clapped for wiping tears and paying mortgage bills late because the kids needed braces. But here it was. Acknowledgement. Not loud, not viral, just quiet, honest thanks. And somehow, that little piece of paper meant more to me than all the flowery Instagram posts Jessica ever staged. I hung it on the fridge, right next to Mason's old macaroni art and Ava's middle school honor roll ribbon. Real honors. Real memories. Slowly, life carved out a new rhythm. Chemo sessions. Walks in the garden when my legs allowed it. Movies with Ava and Mason bundled under quilts. There were hard days. God, there were hard days. Days when the mirror showed a stranger's face. Pale, gaunt, hair thinned out in brittle clumps. Days when the future felt like a thin rope slipping through my fingers. But every time I started to fall, those two caught me. Every single time. Jessica? Oh, she tried to claw her way back. Sent letters dripping with fake regret. Tried to call from burner numbers. Even had the gall to show up one evening, standing outside the gate in a crumpled sweater. Crocodile tears running down her cheeks. Ava spotted her first. We were all sitting out back, watching Mason teach the neighbor's dog new tricks. Ava's shoulders tensed. Mason's face went pale. "Nana," Ava whispered. "She's here." I stood slowly. My knees ached, my back protested, but my heart was steady. I walked to the gate, feeling the earth solid beneath my shoes. Jessica clung to the chain-link fence like a child locked out of recess. "Mom," she sobbed, "please, I have nowhere else to go." I studied her, really looked at her. The smear of mascara under her eyes, the twitchy, restless hands, the desperation clinging to her like cheap perfume. Once upon a time, that would have gutted me. I would have opened the gate, thrown myself into fixing what was broken, begged her to stay, but not anymore. Not after everything. Not after she showed me, again and again, that she loved my sacrifices more than she ever loved me. I straightened my spine. "My home is full," I said, voice quiet but unshakable. Jessica's mouth opened like she might argue, plead, bargain. I didn't wait to hear it. I turned my back, walked away, and for the first time in decades, I didn't feel guilt dragging behind me like a rusty chain. Just relief, clean and sharp as mountain air. That night, Mason curled up on the couch beside me, his head heavy against my shoulder. "You did the right thing, Nana," he murmured. I kissed his forehead, breathing in the scent of soap and boyhood. "I know, baby," I whispered. "This time, I know." The fall came slow that year, like the trees were too tired to let go of their leaves. I understood that feeling. How hard it is to release what you've carried for so long, even when it's already dead weight. But little by little, the house shifted, became lighter, brighter. Ava's laughter in the kitchen while she baked snickerdoodles from scratch. Mason's sneakers thudding up the stairs, backpack slung crooked over his shoulder. The steady hum of Nurse Sandy's radio playing oldies in the den while she adjusted my medication. Life wasn't perfect. Chemo still beat me down some days. The fatigue still settled heavy in my bones, making every step feel like dragging my feet through wet sand. But there was hope in the walls now. Hope stitched into the very woodwork, humming low and strong like a heartbeat. The community fundraiser, the real one, started by some kind souls who remembered who I was before cancer, did better than any of us dared dream. Enough came in to not just cover my medical care, but to finally give me what Jessica never could: freedom. A few months later, Ava came home from school waving a flyer, her cheeks flushed pink with excitement. "Nana!" she cried, breathless. "There's a new program in town. A grant for seniors to renovate their homes for accessibility. We should apply." At first, I hesitated. Part of me still flinched at the idea of spending money on myself. After all those years of hearing, "You're a burden," whispered behind my back, it felt almost sinful to imagine luxury. But Ava looked so hopeful. And for once, I wanted to say yes to life, instead of always bracing for disappointment. So we filled out the forms, sent in the paperwork, crossed our fingers. 2 weeks later, we got the call. We were approved, fully. The kitchen would be redesigned with lower counters and easy grip handles. The bathroom would get a roll-in shower, no more slippery tubs. The doorways widened for easier wheelchair access if I needed it down the road. And the best part? It would all be done in soft, warm colors: peach, cream, sunlit oak. Not the sterile fake luxury Jessica had cared about. A real home, for real living. The day the contractors arrived, Mason grabbed a Sharpie and scrawled a tiny note on the old drywall before it got covered up. "Nana's house, always full of love." I didn't see it until much later, when the foreman called me in to admire the first coat of paint. I stood there, tears blurring my vision, one hand over my heart. Not because the cabinets were new, not because the floors were smooth and safe, because of that little scribbled note tucked away in the bones of the house, a secret only we would know, a promise that even when the world tried to tear us apart, we'd stitched ourselves back together with love strong enough to last. Ava came to me one evening, shy, twisting her sweatshirt sleeves around her wrists. She was 17 now, sharp, thoughtful, standing on the edge of her own life. "I've been thinking," she said, sitting down beside me on the porch swing. "I want to stay local for college, maybe community college first. Be close, help out." I took her hand gently. "Ava, sweetheart," I said, my voice thick with unshed tears. "I never want you to stay for me. You have your whole life ahead of you." "But I want to," she said simply. "Besides," she added, smiling sly, "Mason would miss my cooking too much." We both laughed. Deep, real belly laughs that shook the porch swing. "Mason?" He started taking carpentry classes at school. Said he wanted to be able to fix stuff for Nana when he grew up. Built me a little birdhouse out of scrap wood and painted it the most ridiculous shade of blue you ever saw. Hung it right outside the kitchen window. And every morning, while I sipped my tea, fat little finches and sparrows gathered there, chirping their heads off like they owned the place. Maybe they did. Maybe we all did. Maybe the point wasn't owning anything at all. Maybe it was just belonging. Jessica didn't come around anymore. Oh, we heard about her now and then. She bounced from place to place, couch to couch, always chasing the next angle, the next pity party, the next handout. But she wasn't our problem anymore. We had closed that chapter, locked the door, and thrown away the key. Forgiveness? Maybe someday. But reconciliation? That required trust. And trust wasn't something you got just because you shared a last name. It was something you earned. And Jessica, bless her broken heart, had spent all her credit with us. As the first snow dusted the garden in December, I stood at the kitchen sink, watching the world turn soft and white. Ava and Mason flitted in and out of the house, hanging twinkling lights, laughing and arguing about whether tinsel was tacky or festive. The oven was warm, with the smell of gingerbread. The oxygen machine hummed softly in the corner, ignored now like a loyal old friend. And me? I was right where I belonged. Not a burden, not an afterthought, not invisible. A mother, a grandmother, a woman still standing, even after all the storms. It came on a Sunday. The kind of cold Oregon morning that curls under your sweater and nestles in your bones. I was folding laundry, slowly, deliberately, when Ava called from the front door. "Nana," she said, eyes cautious, "there's someone here." I didn't need her to finish the sentence. I knew. I don't know how I knew, but I did. I felt it in the pit of my stomach, like a knot that had never truly untied. "Jessica." I shuffled to the window and peeked through the curtains. There she was, standing on the porch with a cheap bouquet of gas station flowers and a paper grocery bag that sagged at the bottom. She looked smaller somehow, not just thinner, deflated, hair pulled into a lopsided bun, no makeup, wearing a puffy coat 2 sizes too big, like she'd borrowed someone else's life and was still trying to make it fit. "Nana?" Ava asked softly. "Should I tell her to go?" I looked out at Jessica again, shivering in the cold, eyes darting between the door and the ground, like she wasn't sure whether to knock or run. I thought about all the nights I lay awake, hoping she'd just say sorry, all the birthdays she missed, the fundraiser she turned into a cash grab, the cancer she used as currency. And now, here she was, too late, too broken, too her. "No," I said finally. "I'll speak to her." Ava didn't move. She searched my face like a warning. "Only if you want to." I gave her a small smile. "I do, but not for her. For me." I opened the door and stepped out onto the porch. The cold bit through my sleeves, but I stood tall. Jessica looked up and froze. "Mom," she breathed, eyes already glistening. "You look well." I nodded. "I am." She held out the flowers. "I didn't know what kind you still liked." I didn't take them. She lowered them slowly, her face crumpling. I know I messed up," she stammered. "I know you probably hate me." I tilted my head. "Hate takes energy," I said. "I've been using mine to heal." Her eyes filled. "I'm sorry, Mom, for everything." I really am." It sounded right. The words, I mean. They were all there in the right order. But something in the delivery was off. Like she was reading lines from a script she barely understood. I stared at her. At the girl I used to braid ribbons into. The woman who grew up chasing image over integrity. The daughter who once called me a burden, then turned me into a headline for sympathy. And I saw her clearly now. Not as a villain. Not even as a victim. Just a woman I no longer trusted. "I'm glad you came," I said evenly. "But you need to understand something." She blinked. "Okay. This house, my life, it's not yours to walk back into." "I know," she whispered. "No," I said firmer. "I don't think you do." She looked up, startled. "I have peace now, Jessica," I said. "Hard-earned. Paid for with every quiet moment you ignored, every sacrifice you claimed as your own. I'm not going to let anyone, especially you, disturb it again. But I'm your daughter," she said softly, brokenly. "And for a long time," I replied, "I thought that meant I owed you everything." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "But you used up that everything, sweetheart. And then some." She held up the paper bag with both hands. "There's a photo album, from your room. I kept it. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry." That stopped me. "The photo album? The one with the hand-sewn cover, the baby pictures, the birthday cakes?" I reached out and took it. It was heavier than I remembered. She stared at the bundle in my arms like it held a part of her she hadn't touched in years. "Do you think we could start over?" she asked. "Someday?" I met her eyes, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. "I think," I said gently, "you need to start over with yourself." She didn't argue, didn't cry, just nodded, wiped her nose on her sleeve, and stepped down from the porch. As she turned to go, she looked back one last time. But I'd already stepped inside and closed the door behind me. Inside, the house was warm, safe, Ava had set a pot of soup on the stove. Mason was tinkering with his birdhouse again, muttering to himself about perch angles. I set the album down on the coffee table and sat in my favorite chair. Ava glanced over. "You okay?" I smiled at her. "Better than I've been in a long, long time." Jessica had brought back a photo album, but she couldn't rewrite what was already printed inside. She couldn't erase the captions I wrote in shaky cursive at midnight, couldn't take back the birthdays I baked from scratch, couldn't unstitch the name Nana from the heart of this home. She could show up, apologize, cry, beg, but some doors, once closed, stay that way. Not out of vengeance, but because we've finally learned what we're worth.